Good evening. We're here for the April 18th, 2022 regular Board of Education meeting, and we'll get a roll call from Ms. Hsa, please.
Mr. Nickram,
Here.
Mr. Paul,
Here.
Mrs. Reynolds, here, Mrs. Bukta.
Here.
Alrighty, we're just going to stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. And each month before any Board of Education meeting, we always really focus on the vision and mission. And the vision is achieving distinction in all that we do. And the mission statement is cultivate an inclusive, high-performing culture of growth and community. And do we have any comments from the audience here?
And we had none that were submitted as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing that there is none, we'll move to the consent agenda.
Yes, as we're aware, Robert's rules provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval of the board in a single motion. Documentation concerning these items had been provided to all board members in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review and will become part of the permanent record. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. This evening, item A, minutes, March 24, 2022, regular meeting. Item B, personnel. Be it resolved, the board approve the following appointment effective at the beginning of the 2022-23 school year. Melissa Steffen, 1.0 FTE math teacher at Fort Atkinson High School. Leanne Sherrill, 1.0 FTE principal at Fort Atkinson High School. Also, please accept the following resignation requests effective at the end of the school year. Jennifer Buck, 1.0 FTE technology education teacher at Fort Atkinson Middle School, and Jennifer Ebanks, 1.0 FTE elementary school behavior interventionist. The board would wish to thank Jennifer Buck for her 1 year and Jennifer Ebanks for her 6 years of service and dedication to the students and community. Then item C, board policy 31.1 update. Item D, 2022-23 school nursing services contract. Item E, 2022-2025 sports medicine services contract. Item F, gift to the school district. The board would wish to accept the following donation, a donation from Salamoni's Italian Pizzeria of a Coates tire balancer and rim clamp tire changer with an approximate value of $4,000 to the Career and Technical Education Department at Fort Atkinson High School. Of course, the board wishes to thank Salamoni's Italian Pizzeria for their generous donation. Item G, budget transfers, and then item H, payment of district bills and the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Dr. Abbott. Is there anything that the board members like to pull out and discuss further at all? All right, if there is none, we'd like a motion.
I move to pass the consent agenda as written.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Paul, a second by Ms. Reynolds, and a roll call, Ms. Hsa.
Mr. Paul,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mrs. Bukta,
Yes.
Mr. Nickram.
Yes, and that passes. Next up is the instructional program, instructional part of the agenda.
Yes, we have Mrs. Oakley who will introduce our presenters this evening.
It's my pleasure tonight to share with you a spotlight on our 114 members who are pursuing literacy coaching certification within the Comprehensive Literacy Model Training Program. So this evening we have elementary literacy coaches Amber Lemke and Pam Guston, middle school literacy coach Gwen Sashi, and high school literacy coach Andrea Moser, who couldn't be with us tonight because she's on maternity leave. As a district who has spent over 10 years studying and implementing the theory and research-based practice of this national literacy model, we are proud of these individuals who are our most current 114 professionals who have stepped forward to extend their own learning through this important and rigorous training. Tonight's spotlight is a bit different as the presentation that they will be sharing is a direct assignment from one of their certification classes. So please join me in spotlighting these professionals' journey of learning and advancement for our 1-4 readers and writers.
We are your literacy coaches in grades K through 12. There are actually 5 literacy coaches throughout the district, but this year, 4 of the 5 of us are brand new to this role. Amber Lemke and Pam Guston are the coaches over the elementary schools. Gwen Saxey is at the middle school, and Andrea Moser is at the high school. We want to spotlight our work this year with students and teachers. You might be wondering, what does a literacy coach do? We have 3 main roles. The first one is to lift core. We do this by working with the classroom teachers. We use demonstrations, observations, co-teaching, planning, and reflection. Our second role is to provide intervention. We work with small groups of students, some of our most fragile learners. This helps to keep our knowledge relevant. And then finally, we work with systems alignment and program leadership. We bridge the gap from the reality of the classroom to what we envision district-wide.
As Pam mentioned, this year the 4 of us have been going through the Comprehensive Literacy Coach Training. This training is through St. Mary's in California, where we are enrolled in 18 college credits throughout the year. Each month, we spend 2 days in training via Zoom, along with many other hours of reading and job-embedded assignments. The program we are enrolled in focuses on 3 different areas. Leadership is one of the classes we are enrolled in. It's to help build our skills as leaders. Clinical practice is another, which strengthens our practice as interventionists and provides us with frameworks and knowledge to work with students both in intervention and in the classroom to further develop students' literacy skills. And then lastly, we are enrolled in the theory class, which lays the groundwork for best practices related to literacy and the comprehensive literacy model.
Our training has had a big impact this year and will serve our district positively in years to come. Through our training, we have a deep understanding of the comprehensive literacy model. We've been able to collaborate with new coaches in our district K-12, as well as other districts and states, and we have the development of a reflective and collaborative leadership role through our course, as well as knowledge to build positive relationships with teachers based on rapport and resources that we have. Here are some pictures from our elementary school in action with coaching and literacy. You may see some whole group instruction from teachers and coaches, as well as small group instruction from the same. You also see pictures of a coach and teacher working together to plan, reflect, look at student data, as well as students working.
Similar to the elementary school, the middle school has also implemented the comprehensive literacy model in a variety of different ways. Through direct instruction, small group work, working one-on-one with teachers, and also classroom environment. You'll notice that we have classroom libraries in each one of our ELA classrooms, and a heavy focus on spotlighting student work throughout the school. The comprehensive literacy model has also been implemented at the high school. You'll see here Andrea Moser working with another teacher at her school, as well as small groups happening throughout, and a lot of collaborative group work in each one of the classrooms.
These testimonials really show our 1/4 theme for the year of being all in. We asked teachers recently to share their thoughts on their year with coaching, and we were overwhelmed by the response. Here are just a few testimonials that we received when we asked for them. Some of the words that stand out are support, growth, meaningful collaboration, new ideas, and reflective and mindful instruction. We thank you for this opportunity to share the work we've done this year and share this literacy spotlight with you.
Fantastic, thank you.
this evening to answer any questions you might have or any thoughts, any additional information you'd like about their training program or their work this year with our English language arts teachers.
So, yeah, so just a kind of a quick question as we're going through the slides here a little bit. It mentioned that there was 18 credits done at St. Mary's. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think sometimes that gets missed, especially, you know, that's 18 credits is nothing, no small task here.
Thank you for recognizing that.
So can you talk a little bit about the training that goes into it? Obviously, it's not a position that we just jump into and all of a sudden, like, we're trained and we're ready to rock and roll here. It's 18 credits, and if you can kind of shine a light on that for us, that'd be great.
Sure, we took a 2-credit course right before school began. That was 2 weeks before the school year started, looking at assessments for students in small group, especially to get started with intervention. And then each semester we had 3 courses that were 3 credits each, theory course, the leadership, and then clinical, like you saw.
Great, awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious, just given that you're all in different roles and you're doing this learning sort of just in time or as you're also working with other teachers and kids, and with that change comes, you know, a lot of difference in what you're doing in your work as well. I guess, and what's something that's been rewarding or something that's been significant to you in this new role and set of responsibilities?
I can go there. So I am still a classroom teacher as well as a coach right now, so I'm doing part-time with both. I think the ability to be able to observe other teachers and be in other classrooms has been so powerful. Being able to work with other teachers, this is the first year I've really been able to do that. Be able to get into the other 6th and 7th grade ELA classrooms at the middle school has been one of the most powerful things I've noticed in my teaching, in my own classroom, and then also being able to reflect with them for their own teaching practices. So, very beneficial.
Well, our roles have been evolving and changing over the course of the year, but one of the things that was implemented this year is that all teachers were able to be coached this year at the elementary level, and that was really a neat experience for me. Sometimes in the past, it's been, you know, voluntary teachers who wanted to be coached in a certain area. And a lot of the teachers who were maybe a little fearful of that or reluctant had some very positive, powerful experiences. So that felt great on both sides of that.
And I think really just normalizing what Gwen talked about. With getting in classrooms, we'd like to see that happen more. And in this role, we can help facilitate that. So that's something really exciting looking forward. And just how the work that we do every month is applicable the next day. It's exciting.
You mentioned that the roles kind of evolved a little bit as the years kind of gone on. When looking back of what you envisioned the role to be, you know, a number of months ago versus what it is today, can you talk a little bit about like how that's changed and how your viewpoints have changed on that a little bit?
You want me to talk? Well, it's just been a lesson in flexibility too, but it's really interesting. The powerful learning we want our students to have is through collaboration with each other and reflection, and that's what our role as a coach is to facilitate that with other teachers. And sometimes as the teacher, that's kind of hard to do. You put yourself out there and it's a little bit scary. So I think that the teachers have become more comfortable with that, and they're used to people being in their classrooms and talking about how things are going, and they don't view it as evaluative or judgmental, just what are we doing to help lift our students.
Love it, thank you.
I think one of the exciting things here is that, you know, we're looking, I'm sorry, that we're looking at having coaching available K-12, which is certainly new. And when we think about a system, you know, kids often get used to how we do things, but that's not always been the case with teachers in this capacity as well. So the addition has really been helpful. And to your point as well, this is very rigorous training, and the training that has been done with people in the past, it's not a couple of workshops that one does. Right. It's graduate level work on top of learning the roles and responsibilities and working with kids and teachers day in and day out as well. So it's, I'm sure, very exciting and also a grind depending on the moment of the day. So, excuse me to interrupt.
Oh, sorry. I find this very intriguing with the literacy program. What I actually appreciate is going from K through 12. With the collaboration and reflection that you had among each other, what do you believe is the most impactful, effective part of the program that kind of goes along from K all the way to 12, that you feel that is something that we could all address all together?
I think it's just the reflection. I don't know. I feel like it's probably just reflection in general, in that we're helping teachers reflect upon their practice. We're helping students reflect upon their practice, their work, and pushing at every level from being helped along to that independent stage. And that's really where we want everyone to be. And I just see that kind of throughout the whole K-12 and teachers as well.
One of the things that I've enjoyed this year is we're part of a literacy consortium, and we've met a number of different times for a full day throughout the year, and it's the building principals, it's directors, it's our improvement coordinator, it's myself, and to be able to talk about one part of what we do for an entire day and to be able to learn along with one another is really powerful, and it's been a lot of fun to have these teachers as part of that team this year as well.
All right, exciting, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty, next on the agenda is the non-instruction part. Mr. Abbott?
Yep, so item
Dr.
A
Abbott, sorry.
is the employee handbook changes, which is the second read, if you recall from last month, is simply language updates, given the results of our Office of Civil Rights audit. So again, that's just a second read on some semantic language changes.
Alrighty. Like a motion on that?
Be it resolved that the following changes to the administrative, certified, and support staff employee handbooks are removed from the table and adopted for use in the school district of Fort Atkinson. Revise employee handbook acknowledgement to include notification that the district does not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, or disability. Revise section 2 employment law 2.01 equal opportunity / discrimination to include designation of at least one employee to coordinate district efforts to comply with and carry out district responsibilities, and revise section 2 employment law 2.02 Americans with Disabilities Act to include designation of at least one employee to coordinate district efforts to comply with and carry out district responsibilities.
I'll second.
Alrighty, we have a motion by Mr. Paul, a second by Mrs. Reynolds, and a voice vote, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? And that passes. Alrighty. Next part is the ESSER plans and allocations.
Yeah, so the next, we have a presentation by Jason Demarath, our Director of Business Services, and Mandy Harper, our Director of Human Resources. They will be covering materials from item B, C, D, E, and F of the agenda. Their presentation is all encompassing of those items. I might suggest that the board consider resolutions related to those items at the end of their presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight, Ms. Harper and I will be sharing an update regarding the overall financial situation for the district, proposed changes for the upcoming 22-23 budget, and resolutions for your consideration related to compensation, contracts, staffing changes, and federal COVID relief funds. This will be our learning map for this evening. We'll begin by looking back at the last few months and some challenges that arose, along with how we have worked to meet those challenges through the strategic evaluation of budget decisions. I will then share some information and proposals around the use of the ESSER COVID relief funds. Following that, Ms. Harper will share information and proposals related to compensation and health insurance. I will then come back and share a budget proposal for your consideration and ultimately tie everything together as we continue to look forward and work to adapt to our financial situation and environment as it unfolds in the coming months. We'll begin by looking back towards the beginning of this calendar year and some of the changes that have taken place since then. This slide was shared with you in January as part of my presentation of the long-range financial projection. At the time this was shared, the projection was built with certain assumptions that would prove to need changes as information came available, even in the days immediately following the January board meeting. The major assumptions that needed to be changed related to compensation and benefits. Shortly after the January board meeting, we received the final CPI increase number from the state of Wisconsin that would be used for bargaining for 22-23. That was 4.7%, and that number, paired with an estimate of market adjustments for next year, would result in possible wage and salary increase of at least 5.5%, as opposed to the 4.5% we were using at the time. In addition to the wage and salary increase, was a possible health insurance increase of almost 16%, while the original projection included an increase of only half that. These possible expense increases, along with no new state revenue, began creating a financial picture that we would need to start managing sooner rather than later to survive the next couple of years. This graph shows the annual operating surplus or deficit based on our long-range projection. The blue line represents what was shared in January, and the orange line represents what happened when we built in these larger than expected wage and insurance increases. As you can see, the line was moving in the wrong direction, and we had to begin taking action to manage our long-term financial situation. In an effort to begin moving those lines in the right direction and manage our long-term financial situation, we've spent the last few months strategically evaluating budget decisions and how best to move forward. You may recognize this slide from your February board meeting, where Dr. Abbott shared possible strategies for your consideration and for you to have a discussion around the prioritization of these strategies. What the board decided at that time was that providing a full salary and wage increase in alignment with CPI and the market was top priority. In order to provide this, the board agreed that there was a need to right-size our staff to align with enrollment and program needs through attrition and restructuring for the 22-23 fiscal year. In addition, we would continue to look for opportunities for strategic abandonment, as well as continue our referendum planning and how best to leverage our ESSER COVID relief funds. Our work as a leadership team over the past 2 months has been focused on these prioritized strategies for right-sizing our staff to enrollment and programs through attrition and restructuring, as well as looking at our return on investments and possible opportunities for strategic abandonment. As a result, we will be attritioning the following positions for the upcoming fiscal year: 1 elementary teacher, 1 math interventionist, 1 high school math teacher, 1 high school tech ed teacher, 4 special education aid positions, and we'll work towards the attrition of 1 regular education learning aid at each of our elementary buildings to restructure based on a proposal that I'll discuss a bit later. In addition, as we continue to have staff turnover throughout the spring and summer, we'll continue to evaluate any vacancies for additional attrition and restructuring opportunities. Also, as part of our work the last couple of months, we've been having conversations about the strategic use of the remaining $1.9 million of ESSER COVID relief funds. This slide was also shared with you in February, as Dr. Abbott provided an update at that time that messaging we were hearing from the state and our professional organizations was that the legislature intended us to use these one-time funds on recurring expenses during this 2-year period, and that if we did not use them, we would risk another biennial budget for 2023-25 with no allowable revenue increases yet again. During this time, we shared information on our ESSER dashboard and surveyed the community to gather their input on the use of these ESSER COVID relief funds. As you can see at the bottom of the slide, we received 63 responses in just 10 days. We asked the community members to rank these 7 categories from most important, or number 1 to them, to least important, or number 7 out of 7 in their minds. As you can see, there were essentially 3 tiers that appeared from that feedback, with the first 2 most important categories in our community's eyes being to offset operating costs and to provide mental health services and supports. This survey feedback affirmed the direction our leadership team was considering and further reinforced the decisions our team made and the board approved in April of 2021. If you recall, in response to what we were seeing with the effects of the pandemic and the closure, the Board of Education approved several new positions for the current budget year to meet those mental health needs of our students and to provide them the support they now required. The board approved and we implemented 2 coordinator positions, a school psychologist, and 3 social workers for the current year, along with math coaches and interventionists already allocated to the ESSER COVID relief funds. We have also found throughout this year that there is an increased student need related to behavior, and we'll be proposing tonight the addition of 2 behavior interventionists at the elementary level. I'll speak to more detail about this proposal later in this presentation. This evening, we're asking the board to approve the use of the final $1.9 million in ESSER COVID relief funding to cover the costs of the positions approved last spring for the current fiscal year through next year and even into the 2023-24 school year for social workers. The use of these funds for this purpose will directly meet the community's desire to offset operational costs by moving these positions onto federal funds for a couple of years, as well as the community's desire to use these funds for mental health services and supports. It will also provide temporary financial relief to the district's budget, just as we have been strategically working towards these past few months. While much was unknown last spring about the effects of the pandemic on our students, this team and board leadership was responsive and forward-thinking in their implementation of these positions to provide our students needed mental health services and supports based on what we were seeing at that time. These federal funds were targeted towards uses such as this, and while we took our time in evaluating the most strategic way to use these funds and observe our students' needs in our organization's environment over the last year, it is now apparent that this is the best way to leverage these one-time funds. And I'll now turn it over to Ms. Harper to share compensation and health insurance information, and then I'll come back and summarize and bring all of this together.
Thank you, Mr. Demerath. This evening, I will be sharing some information with you related to staff compensation and health insurance. First, we'll discuss compensation. For those of you who may not have been on the board when our compensation system was implemented, I'd like to share a brief history with you. Our current compensation system was implemented in 2015-16 based on 3 mutual interests: attract and retain high-quality employees, reward for doing a good job and cost of living adjustment, and honor experience and longevity. Our compensation system is a market-based system in which we gather new data every year for every position using data from our comparable districts. Each employee group has a set of comparables which take into account factors such as size, distance, and others. Our system is a living system which consistently evolves and allows through an appeals process the opportunity for adjustments to be made each year as the environment changes and the system further develops. We have a lot to celebrate when it comes to our compensation system. First, we use real data in all hiring decisions, which keeps us consistent in our practices as well as competitive with our comparable districts. Second, all of our employees know their market rates based on real data, so they know they are being compensated fairly and in line with what their peers are making in other districts. We are also able to make decisions about compensation adjustment requests using current year market data and a formal appeals process, which engages multiple individuals, the board, versus 1 or 2 individuals, and is used to consider growth opportunities within the system. Finally, the use of market comparable data is continuing to grow and expand as a regional and more recently statewide effort with over 50 participating districts. The School District of Fort Atkinson has been highlighted within that initiative for our sustained and systemic use of the data. Before we dive into the specifics related to the market analysis for this year, I'd like to share with you the system enhancements and recommendations to keep in mind as we move forward. The system currently includes a 7.5% over median cap for longevity, which exists in the system to limit how far above median an employee can go just through longevity. The system is also truly market-based, so median amounts can either go up or down from year to year. The proposed system enhancements for the 22-23 fiscal year are to consider removal of the 7.5% over median cap for longevity and to consider no decrease to certified staff bands. These recommendations are being made due to increases in cost of living for this year and beyond, and the potential impact that may be reflected on median values and employees' compensation related to those values. As I shared in my first slide, the mutual interests that the compensation system was founded on include attract and retain high-quality employees and honor experience and longevity. As our system has and will continue to grow and mature, it is important that we make adjustments to continue to honor these priorities. As a reference point for the upcoming year, there are 14 employees that would be impacted by the 7.5% above median cap, and 28 out of 60 cells in the certified staff analysis, which would decrease without these system enhancements. The cost for such enhancements equates to only 0.09% of the overall certified staff compensation increase, which is minimal in comparison to the value add they will provide related to recruitment and retention. The recommendations for the 22-23 fiscal year are to provide a full market increase to all eligible staff, provide the full CPI increase of 4.7% for all eligible staff, and to provide full longevity increases to all eligible staff. Now let's dive into what those recommended enhancements and recommendations actually look like by staff group. Here you can see the analysis for our administrative group, which includes certified and non-certified administrators. We were able to use current year data from 14 out of our 18 comparable districts, with 1-year-old data being used for the remaining 4. Here you will see an overall wage increase of 6.15%, which includes an increase in the Director of Nutrition contract from 220 days to 260 days, which is necessitated because COVID has created a need for a full-year Director of Nutrition with the development and expansion of summer feeding programs and so on. Factoring in those extra days into the overall wage increase is a total market increase of 1.23% and a CPI increase of 4.7%. If we remove the extra contract days, just as a data point for the Director of Nutrition, so we can see the values on an apples-to-apples basis, you can see that the overall wage increase ends up being 5.68% with a total market increase of 0.94% and a CPI increase of 4.7%. For our certified staff group, we were able to collect current year data from 12 out of our 16 comparable districts. Year-old data was used for the remaining 4 districts. For our certified staff group, we see an overall wage increase of 5.88%, which includes a total market increase of 1.18%, which reflects no cells decreasing, and a CPI increase of 4.7%. A couple of points of interest are the average increase between 5-year bands, which is 5.8% or $4,704, and the average difference between bachelor's and master degrees, which is $4,785. This information is paramount in expressing to staff the value of their dedication and longevity to the district and their careers, as well as the monetary value of continuing their education. Finally, we have our support staff analysis, which shows an overall wage increase of 5.24%, which includes a total market increase of 0.38% and a CPI increase of 4.7%. What is most exciting about this data is that we are using actual pay data for specific employees in very specific roles to determine our hiring medians. This is compared to not that many years ago when this group's data was collected and analyzed using pay scales requested annually from other districts. That allows this data for this group to be much more accurate than it has been in years past. Taking a look at all of the data together, you can see that as Mr. Demerath shared, we projected a 5.5% increase and ended up with a 5.76% overall increase, which does include that addition of 40 extra days annually for the Director of Nutrition Services. If we look at our increase versus our projection without the additional days for the Director of Nutrition, as you can see on the bottom here, so again, more of an apples to apples comparison, we can see that our increase actually goes down to 5.71% compared with our projected 5.5%. You can also see that the percent increase for the non-certified staff group, non-certified administrator group falls much more in line with the other three staff groups. This is important to note because the director of nutrition position essentially pays for itself, so the additional days don't have the same impact on the budget the way another position might. To recap the system enhancements and recommendations I shared with you prior to the market analysis financial data, we are proposing that there be a consideration of removal of the 7.5% over median cap for longevity and no decreases to the certified staff bands as system enhancements for the 22-23 year and beyond. For the 22-23 year, we are also recommending the board provide a full market increase, full CPI increase of 4.7%, and full longevity increases to all eligible staff. Of the staff groups just discussed, certified staff are issued contracts annually for their positions as approved by the board. With that, we are requesting that the board approve the issuance of contracts for the certified staff group, including the compensation adjustments and, as proposed, and additional contract days as outlined on this slide. You can see the additional contract days are broken down into two categories. First are the regular or traditional contract days, which are just a handful of extra days for specific positions, including IMC, ag teachers, counselors, and so on. These are simply a few extra contract days to get some routine tasks done related to their positions, which happen each and every year. The second group includes extra contract days for professional learning. Historically, this professional learning would be done during the school year with teachers being pulled and covered by subs. Given the sub shortage and the benefit of this learning taking place prior to the start of the school year, and with the full groups who will be implementing the learning, professional learning contract days were added as a budget proposal beginning with the 21-22 school year. For the 22-23 school year, 198 extra contract days spread between 131 staff are being recommended to focus on math and literacy training at all three levels, as well as co-teaching training at the middle and high school. The areas for professional learning have and will continue to be determined annually in order to provide support to staff to help in reaching our strategic plan goals. The cost for these extra contract days ends up being $65,506, which is actually about $30,000 less than the contract days requested for the 21-22 school year. Moving on to another important area related to compensation of staff, we have the additive schedule. For those of you who may not know, the additive schedule is the system which designates pay for extracurricular and co-curricular activities, including athletics, clubs, and so on. This schedule pays for these roles based on a percentage of a base salary specific to the activity and the individual's years of experience in that position. This schedule has not seen much change as of late, with the most recent adjustments being the base being increased by 3.39% in 2018-19 to $33,049, and the addition of art and archery to the schedule in 2019-20. Tonight, I have two recommendations related to the additive schedule. First, I would suggest that the current additive base be increased by the CPI of 4.7%, which would bring it to $34,602. Second is an alignment of the athletic coaching area of the additive schedule into three specific tiers related to length of season and investment of time. This serves to clarify and simplify the largest part of the additive schedule. Additionally, as we work toward our vision of achieving distinction in all we do, this works to help us attract and retain high-quality staff in these areas. The move to this tiering structure would only benefit staff and not result in any decreases for continuing or new coaching staff, and would only have a cost increase of about $23,000. Moving forward, we will continue work on the additive schedule, which will include an analysis of existing assignments for alignment and adjustment within the schedule, and analysis of potential assignments for alignment within and addition to the schedule. All of these analysis will include consideration of a defined role, responsibilities, and expectations, as well as specific and measurable outcomes related to those individual additive assignments. Here we will transition from compensation to health insurance, which is another of the district's most significant expenses. To provide a brief history, the district had an HRA, or health reimbursement arrangement, plan for a number of years, adding an HSA, or health savings account plan option in 2019-20 to control rising premium costs. Overall, though, the plan design has remained unchanged. We are now at a bit of a turning point. Our district reached the end of a 3-year rate cap with Dean as of our last renewal. That would be for our 21-22 plan year. Combined with poor plan performance, we saw a 15.9% increase on both plans for our 22-23 plan renewal. Here you can see a visual of our premiums from a historical perspective. Costs rose from 2015-16 through 2018-19. The HSA plan was implemented in 2019-20 and served its purpose of controlling rising premiums. Since then, our premiums have again risen to the point that we see on the far right, which is a significant increase from 2021-22. As I shared, this increase is related to the end of our rate cap and poor plan performance. Going into 21-22, our plan was running at about an 80% medical loss ratio, meaning that Dean paid out 80% of the premiums they collected from us in claims. Going into our renewal for 22-23, our plan is running at about 140% medical loss ratio, meaning that Dean paid out 40% more in claims than they collected in premiums for our group. Collecting more premiums at this point through the 15.9% increase is a way for them to control their costs and minimize their risk. Through extensive work with our benefit consultants, we were able to find a solution that is now depicted as the red bar on the far right in comparison to the gray bar, which was our initial renewal. This option includes several decrements to our plan design, including office visit, urgent care, and emergency room copays, as well as increases to or the addition of, depending on the plan, prescription copays, and these decrements would be across both plans. With necessary plan design changes to achieve lower premiums, additional out-of-pocket expenses would essentially offset market and CPI adjustments to staff compensation, resulting in a net zero, or in some cases, possibly even a loss in total compensation. This is not ideal for recruitment and retention. Now you can see the new red bar on the far right in comparison to the two gray bars next to it, which indicate the two renewal options I have shared with you so far. This option keeps costs for premiums essentially static, which provides an avoidance of approximately $800,000 in additional expenditures. So how do we achieve this and to the best interest of our district and staff? We achieved this by transitioning all of our active staff to our HSA plan beginning 9/1 of 22. This keeps costs static, or in some cases decreases cost to employees without any plan design changes, which will be beneficial to us in the long run. In order to make this change more palatable to staff, we will be accelerating our HSA deposit schedule. So right now, the HSA funds are deposited quarterly over the period of the year, and we will be accelerating that to 2 times per year, half up front and then halfway through the year. We will also continue our acceleration process for high-cost pharmaceutical expenses. This will be detailed out to staff in an email communication this week with in-depth, in-person informational sessions to follow. Now I will turn it back over to Jason, who will share with you how all of the information I explained related to compensation and health insurance fits into the bigger picture of our overall district budget.
Thank you, Mandy. Before I summarize everything you have heard this evening, we have one more item for your consideration related to the 2022-23 budget. As you may recall, in November, the board approved 2 additional elementary behavior interventionists for the remainder of the current school year. Unfortunately, due to the temporary nature of these positions, we were unable to secure high-quality team members this year. However, this time has allowed us to evaluate this proposal and restructure it in a way that makes it more effective, as well as provides for long-term sustainability of the positions. The restructured proposal being shared this evening in your board materials would provide for 1 full-time behavior interventionist at each of our 4 elementary schools by adding 2 full-time positions. The way we have restructured these is to require a special education certification for the position so that they can serve the special education population in a building as well as the regular education population. This would provide for full-time, highly qualified, salaried team members that could work across various environments to ensure synthesis of learning and transfer of skills. This restructuring also allows for long-term sustainability of funding for these positions. Because these positions would now serve special education students as well as regular education students and require a special education license, they can be funded through special education funding sources such as the federal special education grant and state special education aid. In order to make these positions cost neutral for the district, we would be looking to attrition 4 special education aid positions and 4 regular education aid positions in the elementary schools, some of which are already vacant. Until we are able to realize the full attrition of these 8 positions, we would fund the portion needed from the ESSER COVID relief funds for that time frame, which would again meet our community's desire of offsetting operational costs and providing mental health services and supports with these funds. Overall, we believe this restructuring will provide a better service to our students and put highly qualified full-time staff in our buildings to meet the ongoing behavioral needs we are experiencing. Finally, let's wrap all of this together this evening by looking forward at the impact these changes would have and what we will continue to be working on in the coming months. Circling back to this budget surplus and deficit graph, with the proposals that Ms. Harper and I have outlined this evening, not only have we adjusted our future financial position back to where we started in January, but we have improved that position as illustrated by the green line on this graph. The strategic consideration of our decisions and work over the last few months on the long-term financial future of the district is certainly a cause for celebration. However, as you can also see, we still have much work to do to improve our long-term financial picture. So our work moving forward will include continuing to right-size our staff to align to our enrollment and programs through the evaluation of any vacancies that may present themselves in the near future for possible attrition or restructuring. We will continue to prioritize return on investment and recognize opportunities for strategic abandonment within our organization. We will also continue to investigate and plan for a capital and/or operational referendum over the next few months. And when we think long-term, with inflation continuing to increase and a CPI increase for 2023-24 that looks to be quite a bit higher than the current 4.7% we discussed this evening, we'll need to continue to take a long-term approach to our planning and decisions. This approach will allow us to meet our 5-year strategic plan goals and reinvent our organization through sound financial decisions as we continue to emerge from the effects of the pandemic. As we continue this planning in our efforts to manage the long-term finances of the district, we'll continue our efforts to swing that line back up towards zero through various methods, including possible referendums, as illustrated here by the yellow line. So before you this evening, you have several resolutions for your consideration to put into place everything that Ms. Harper and I shared this evening, including the use of the ESSER COVID relief funds, the addition of the behavior interventionists, compensation changes for next year, the issuance of teacher contracts, additive schedule changes, and the approval of the agreement with the Fort Atkinson Education Association. We will note that the changes mentioned to health insurance do not require board approval, but will be implemented and communicated out to our 114. With that, we'll take any questions the board may have.
I have a question. It's a quick one. When you said that there were about 4 aides at least that would be attritioned, and you said that some of those are vacant, do you have an actual number?
That are vacant?
Yeah.
I believe it's at least 2 special education aides and I think maybe 1 regular ed aide at this point.
So out of 4 aides, we have 3 that are vacant.
So 4 regular ed aides and 4 special ed aides. I believe we have 3 or 4 that are vacant already.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is kind of a general statement, but going through some of the ESSER funds, things like that, it was nice to see the community input, like we've talked about in previous board meetings, was certainly there, and we were able to match up what community input, what administrative thought that might look like as well. So I was really happy to see that. And it's just simply a reaction of student needs that we're able to react to very quickly with this. So I was happy to see the recommended action by a lot of the different positions here. So that was good.
And kind of piggybacking off of what you said, I feel like that, there were some parts of this that were a little bit more not what I personally as a board member wanted to hear, but like knowing who is doing this work and knowing the time spent in bringing these proposals and these resolutions to us, I knew that we, what was happening was best for the district, not best for just the ease of, making, numbers work. But yeah, that was about all I was going to say about that. I wasn't really concerned. I mean, we got the primer earlier and kind of knew it was coming our way, but it doesn't look nearly as gory as it could be. And I know that the proper amount of time and care was put into the resolutions before us. Oh, I did have another question actually. This is for Mrs. Harper, or Ms. Harper. Are you, in the last 7 months, have you seen just hiring in general, is it as difficult for you as it is for retail environments? Because it's very difficult for us in the retail environment right now.
I would say that we are probably in line with all employers. We are seeing, at least from the HR updates that I get, that unemployment is at historically low levels, where the number of available jobs is at historically high levels. So I expect you would see that across the board.
Thank you very much.
I just want to thank you guys real quick, anybody that worked on this. Like, we've seen obviously a lot of information and pretty much has barely looked beneath the amount of probably hours and hours of data you guys look through. And I mean, everything you just talked about is, difficult because we can only do so much with what we have, and you guys get a lot of curveballs thrown at you. So I think on behalf of the board and hopefully the rest of the community, I mean, I think you guys are doing about as good as humanly possible with these difficult decisions. And, the outcomes certainly look better than they did the first pass. So I think that's a testament to what you guys have been able to do. So thanks.
All right, do you have any further discussion? And if I'm right, Ms. Haas, we can read all the resolutions and just do one roll call at the very end. Is that correct?
I think you
No.
probably should take them separately,
Yes.
and I know they're lengthy, but given the gravity of their impact, I think they probably should be read as well.
So just read them simply, individually, or are we going
I think you need to act on them
to vote
separately.
on them? Okay.
Mhm.
Alrighty, with that, do we have some motions here?
Be it resolved that the school district of Fort Atkinson adopt the following compensation structure for the 2022-23 fiscal year. That practices from the implementation of the compensation model in 2021-22 be carried forward unless adjusted as outlined herein. Increase staff pay rates which were identified to be below their respective market value analysis median to their market value analysis median. Would that be the first one?
No, this is the
Oh, the
entire-
whole thing, okay, sorry. Keep going. Adopt the recommendation that bands of certified staff market analysis will not decrease from year to year. Recognize another year of service towards market value placement for certified staff and longevity salary adjustments for all groups. Adjust administrators and support staff pay rates by the Consumer Price Index increase of 4.7%. That compensation for certified staff represented by the Fort Atkinson Education Association will be adjusted based upon board approval of a negotiated agreement. That no adjustment in pay will be awarded to those having an active improvement plan on their first day of work in the 2022-23 fiscal year, and be it further resolved that the Board of Education remove the 7.5 over median cap for longevity from the compensation system, and be it further resolved that the school district of Fort Atkinson adjust the additive schedule base salary by the Consumer Price Index increase of 4.7% for the 2022-23 fiscal year.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Cheney and a second by Mr. Paul. A roll call, please, Ms. Hess.
Mrs. Reynolds? Yes. Mrs. Bukta?
Yes.
Mr. Nickram?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Cheney?
Yes.
All right, and that passes.
And
go
then
back
we
to-
did skip ahead a little bit, so we'll have to go
Sure.
back to the ESSER
Back to B?
plans.
Yeah.
We could-
Yes, back to B,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
please.
Okay.
I'll grab that one. Be it resolved that the following positions be approved to be funded through ESSER 2 for fiscal years 2022 and 2023. 1.0 FTE Academic Advancement Coordinator, 1.0 FTE Special Education and Services Coordinator, 1.0 FTE Elementary School Social Worker, 1.0 FTE Secondary School Psychologist, and be it further resolved that the following positions be approved to be funded through ESSER 3, 1.0 FTE High School Social Worker for fiscal years 2022, 23, and 24, 1.0 FTE Middle School Social Worker for fiscal years 22, 23, and 24, 1.0 FTE Elementary School Social Worker for fiscal year 2024, and 2.0 FTE Behavior Interventionists for fiscal years 2023 and 2024.
Seconded.
All right, motion by Mr. Paul and a second by an excited Mr. Cheney.
Yeah, emphatic second there.
Roll call, please, Ms. Haas.
Mrs. Bukta?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Cheney?
Yes.
Mr. Nickram?
Yes.
All right.
Now,
Item
So now we
C,
can do
item
C.
C, budget proposal.
Be it resolved that the request for an additional 2.05 full FTE elementary behavior interventionist beginning with the 2022-23 fiscal year be approved.
I'll second.
A motion by Mr. Cheney, a second by Ms. Reynolds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mrs. Bukta?
Yes.
Mr. Cheney?
Yes.
Mr. Nickram?
Yes.
And then we'll skip to item E, having already taken care of D. This is the individual certified staff contracts.
Be it resolved. Oh, go ahead, go.
Be resolved that the Board of Education approve the issuance of individual employment contracts and additional contract days as proposed for the certified staff for the 2022-23 school year.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. Bukta, a second by Ms. Reynolds. A roll call, please, Ms. Haas.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mrs. Bukta?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mr. Cheney?
Yes.
Mr. Nickram?
Yes.
And then item F, the Fort Atkinson Education Association, or FIA, pay adjustment.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education approve the agreement of a 4.7% CPI Consumer Price Index pay increase with the Fort Atkinson Education Association for the 2022-23 contract year.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Cheney, a second by Mr. Paul. A roll call, please.
Mrs. Bukta?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Cheney?
Yes.
Mr. Nickram?
Yes.
All right, moving forward, we will go to item G, which is the addendum to the 2021-22 school nursing services contract.
Yes, this is obviously, as stated, just an addendum to our existing school nursing contract for additional services required this current school year.
Any discussion among the board? This is in board packet.
Do not?
I do not.
Hearing none, we have an motion to entertain.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education approve the addendum to the school nursing services contract with Fort Healthcare for an additional nursing services hours for the 2021-22 school year.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Nickram, seconded by Mrs. Reynolds, and a roll call, please, Mrs. Haas.
Mr. Nickram?
Yes.
Mr. Paul?
Yep.
Mrs. Reynolds? Yes. Mrs. Bukta?
Yes.
Mr. Cheney?
Yes. Moving forward, item H is the board sponsorship committee report, and Mrs. Bukta has a report.
Few talking points from the meeting. Mr. Demarath provided some background information regarding how the sponsorship program began, the sponsorship policy, and the current sponsorship guide. He also shared the information regarding sponsorships since the inception of the program 10 years ago. Possible changes to the guide. Mr. Demarath shared that Ms. Weidenfowler plans on updating the sponsorship guide over the summer to relaunch the program for the fall. The guide has not changed much since its inception 10 years ago. It will receive an aesthetic improvement as well as deleting sponsorships that may no longer be applicable and adding other possible sponsorships. The pricing structure for the sponsorships will also be examined with research on what other school districts are garnering for their sponsorships. One example that was shared was from the school district of New Berlin. Premier Bank Gymnasium Renewal. Mr. Demarath and other committee members shared the history of the Premier Bank Gymnasium sponsorship. Premier Bank has expressed interest in renewing the sponsorship, and the district team sought guidance from the committee about pricing, structure, and items contained within the sponsorship agreement. The district team will reach out to Premier Bank with a proposal and report back to the committee with the result. The committee would need to recommend any agreement to the Board of Education for approval, as the agreement would exceed $20,000.
Mrs. Bukta, I thought you did a really good job in that for being your first sponsorship committee. I thought you were like pretty engaged, considering when my first one, I just was glazed over. So it was nice to hear you have some critical questions, and I think it's important for this community to know like that we're in good hands with that committee. That committee's doing a good job of evaluating sponsorships and how they work, and who gives them to us, and how we go about that. It's not just willy-nilly. So that's all I had to say. We can move forward. Clerk Amy Reynolds now has a certification of election results.
An election for the school board was held on Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. The Board of Canvassers convened on April 8th, 2022 at 3 p.m. and verified and certified the results. There were 2 open seats on the school board. Candidate Christopher J. Rogers received 1,635 votes, and Robin Selly received 1,535 votes for election to the school board. The elected board members, Christopher J. Rogers and Robin Selly, will take office and begin their 3-year term as school board members on Monday, April 25th, 2022.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mrs. Reynolds. Moving forward, we have items for future board meetings.
Yes, among other items, we may have reports next month related to open enrollment requests, textbook adoptions, the school nursing services update, the CSA 2 contract, and again, I'm sure there will be others. As you may or may not be aware, given the report that Mrs. Reynolds just shared, this evening is Mr. Cheney's and Mr. Paul's last board meeting, and we'd certainly like to thank them for their dedicated service through some extremely troubling times. It is customary that we share our good wishes and our thanks with passing board members at the annual meeting, which of course will take place in August, and we hope that you are both able to attend for some recognition of your dutiful service. I'm guessing, if I may be so bold, Mr. Cheney, that perhaps the two of you would like to take care of the final action this evening.
Shoot, yeah. We have one more motion before us, and as my predecessor, Mrs. Kim Patrick, used to say, this is everyone's favorite motion.
Be resolved that the Board of Education adjourn.
I can second that. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? All right, and we are out of here, folks. It is 7:36. Thank you very much for coming.